alder is perhaps the most common, widespread and characteristic tree of rivers and other waterside places, where it can thrive in conditions that few other trees will be able to tolerate. And it's able to do this because it harbours in its roots very special filament-like bacteria that have the extraordinary ability to harness atmospheric nitrogen. And they're able to provide the tree with nutrients that would otherwise be beyond its metabolic reach. And as you can see, like hazel, it flowers in spring, and indeed the flowers are similar in most respects to hazel. Like hazel, and indeed like most trees, the flowers are monoecious, which means that they produce separate male and female flowers, but they're both produced on the same tree. So these are the male flowers, the catkins, and the method of pollen presentation and fertilization is very similar as it is in hazel, and indeed in other trees that have pendulous catkins as well, like birches and hornbeams, poplars, walnut, trees like that. And these are the female flowers. Now you may remember that in hazel the female flowers are bud-like structures with a little bunch of scarlet tassels at the top to intercept pollen being carried on the wind. And they turn after fertilization into the familiar hazelnut, which is adapted for dispersal by small mammals like squirrels or wood mice. But here in alder, you can see they are very different. You may remember how essential it is to keep the pollen dry in these wind-pollinated flowers, because it's not waterproof, and if it gets wet, it's no longer viable. So, as in hazel, the pollen is first deposited on little trays below the anthers, from which it will only become airborne when conditions are right. Here are the female flowers. The stigmas are these little purple tongues. Notice that they are generally produced above the male catkins, so the pollen can't fall down on them when pollen is being shed onto the little trays below the anthers. These will develop into woody cones over the next few months, and we'll come back to look at them again when they ripen at the end of summer. In an earlier Ireland, where we humans lived alongside great forests, trees were known, appreciated, and managed in a way we would find difficult to relate to or to appreciate in our day. And alder in particular was ranked alongside trees like hawthorn and birch, willows, elm, mountain ash, and hazel itself. It was ranked in the second tier of value, the ahad fedo, or commoners of the wood. These trees are in Camcor Park in Birr. The river is just 20 metres away. When I was going to school, this was an open field. But alder is a fast-growing tree that matures at 60 years of age. In spite of this rapid growth, the peculiarly dense quality of its timber made alder ideal for making things like masts and poles, because it doesn't splinter easily, and for piles and fence posts in wet ground, because it doesn't rot as other timbers would. This is why Venice was built on a foundation of alder piles. It was also used for making clogs and bowls and made excellent charcoal, especially for gunpowder manufacture. Alder was also used to produce dyes of several colours, including black. In a violent age before the invention of firearms, alder had another very important use, for the making of shields. Because if you were going into battle, you wanted your shield to be made of alder, because if your opponent struck at you with an axe, the shield wouldn't split. And ideally, in fact, the axe might lodge in the shield, giving you the opportunity of an undefended second stroke. In the National Museum in Dublin, there's a shield made from a single slice of a forest alder that is 1 metre across. And you'd have to travel very far and wide in Ireland today to find a single alder of that size. However, the use to which alder was put in earlier Ireland that most fascinates me is a cosmetic one. It was the custom in Ireland long ago for men to dye their eyelids black. There's an unforgettable line in the old Irish tale, The Sons of Ishlu, which describes the heartbroken Deirdre, who is talking about the beauty of her slain beloved Naoise, in which she compares the blackness of his eyelids to the blackness of the blackest of beetles, the Daradale or devil's coach horse. And unforgettable as that image is, what I find even more memorable is apparently that the missionary monks, the Irish missionary monks to Europe in the centuries after the breakup of the Roman Empire, also dyed or painted their eyelids black. And that in addition to their extraordinary tonsure, where the hair was shaven completely off the top and sides of the head, but allowed to flow freely down the back. I've often wondered what they must have looked like.